Hey guys, come on in, everybody come on in. We've got a great topic tonight. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. My name is Jeff Howard. Give you a few minutes to get in here. We have 190 people actually signed up for this topic tonight, which I think is pretty amazing. It shows that it's a topic that people want to know about. And I've got a great panel. We've been talking before we got on, and boy, do they know their stuff. I'm very, very impressed. But before we start, my name is Jeff Howard. I want to welcome you tonight. Sarah is celebrating an 80-year-old's birthday in New York, and she asked me if I would step in. And when I found out who the panelist was and the topic, I definitely wanted to because it's something I wanted to learn about. Before we start, though, like always, guys, I want you guys to notice that you're all muted right now, just because if you're all on, it would be a little bit hectic. Your videos are all off because it can be a little distracting. Security is if Dylan walks around naked and we got to put clothes on him. Participants we got going on, but what I care about most is your chat. Open up the chat button. I want you to drag it to the side. And I would love my panelists to type in where they're from, and then I'd love to hear where you guys are from as well. And during the course of the evening, guys, I would love for you guys to type in any questions you have or anything you want to contribute with us, because that's what makes this a great interaction. We're here to answer your questions, and if I don't get to them, I'll definitely have one of the panelists answer them as well. But before we start, let's go ahead and introduce our panels, and I'm gonna let my panels do it themselves. So let's start with my beautiful Sohaila.
Hey guys, I am Sohaila Digsby. I've been speaking with SCW for almost a decade. I'm a registered dietitian and I've been a fitness pro since I was in college studying dietetics. So I've always had those two hand in hand for about 2.5 decades. I love to talk about nutrition and food and weight management and to make it really practical for when it comes to just living in the real world. I live in the real world. I have 3 kids, a family, and a job. And so I know I'm not going to just try to build you this Instagram perfect reel that you don't really live. So I'm all about making it very practical for you. So thanks for having me on tonight.
I love that. And Amber?
Hey y'all, I'm Amber Toole and I live in Ocala, Florida. I own the Training Tool. We are a fitness and nutrition studio here in Ocala. I'm originally from a tiny town in Georgia called Vidalia. I went to Georgia Southern University and got my degree in physical education and health. And I've been in this industry for 30 years this year. So I have a lot of experience to share, and the majority of my clientele is over 40 females. So I have a lot of experience with helping them with their fitness and nutrition. And I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you, Amber. And last but definitely not least, Dylan, who is a new friend to all of us. We're very excited to have him. Boy, does he know his stuff. Dylan, let him know who you are.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Dylan. I'm down in Boca Raton, Florida, so South Florida, a couple hours south of Amber. And I originally grew up in New England. I went to school outside of Boston. I got my degree in athletic training, my bachelor's, and I got my master's in nutrition for human performance. I was a basketball player there. So I've lived it, I've learned it, and I'm trying to pay it forward. I work mostly with general population down here in sunny South Florida, and I work out of a gym. I do a lot of in-home training and athletic training, and then I do a lot of nutrition coaching as well. And I love to tie the two together and just, like Sohaila said, just make it practical and have a good ability to relate it to other things. Make it simple, keep it simple, and it usually works that way. I'm super excited to be here, so don't forget to eat good, live good.
I love that. My name is Jeff Howard. I'm originally from Canada. I actually got to the States. I had a 4-year tennis scholarship to the University of Texas where I actually studied kinesiology. My panelists, did you know that this is the first year that they've ever included my degree in my bio? They have never included my bio, my degree in it. It's always been like this, just Jeff. If you've known me, you know I do the personal training certification, I do the Group X certification, the yoga certification, I've done the Pilates certification. But enough about me. Let's talk about tonight. Tonight is exciting to me. It's how to help clients gain weight and muscle, okay? And this is a great, great topic. While not as common, many trainers will have clients who just cannot gain weight or muscle despite their best efforts. Some people may wish they had this issue, but it can be very frustrating as trying to lose weight. Join our panel as experts as they provide advice and tips on how to gain weight and muscle in a healthy and sustainable way. And we're just gonna go ahead and jump right in, guys. What are the signs that someone is a hard gainer and can't gain weight or muscle? What are signs that someone is a hard gainer and can't gain weight or muscle. So Hayla, let's start with you. How can you tell someone is a hard gainer?
So that term is more often used in the bodybuilding sphere. So out of the people on this call, I'm not sure how many of you are bodybuilders or work with bodybuilders or compete in competitions like that. So that may not be a phrase you've heard of, but basically that's saying people who are having a really hard time putting on weight, particularly muscle weight. And often if you're this person, you know this, you'll be so proud of yourself when you put it on, and it takes so much work to keep it on. And then the minute you stop your intense eating and intense training, your weight's going to come off fairly quickly. And so it's something we were talking about as panelists before coming on, that genetics does play a big role, but there's also other factors. There's factors related to stress management, to gut health and stomach problems that people might have that could be related to them not being able to maintain weight, or if they don't eat because they're stressed, or if they move or deal with stress a lot with movement. And, there's just lots of different factors, but depending on, where you're coming from with your clients, we're going to touch on a couple different ones of those today.
I love that. And what about you, Dylan? What are signs to you that someone is a hard gainer and can't gain weight or muscle? What signs that you look
if
for?
they look like this, they're probably a hard gainer. No, I was definitely that person. So I was an athlete my whole life, and I was always so active. And like we had actually talked about before, and so Hayla had mentioned, was that when you are on something for like ADHD, right, it's something that actually, like coffee, is a suppressant for your leptin levels, or ghrelin levels, I should say. So you're actually suppressing your hunger hormones. And I did not eat a lot. I was a very picky eater. I didn't like to eat, and I was active. All I did was play sports. I was outside, couldn't get me inside. Didn't matter like what time it was of day. I wanted to be out and I wanted to go. And that led me to being an athlete at the end of high school, being 135 pounds. And trying to go play college basketball at 5'11", 135 pounds is not ideal. So I really had to take a look at what I was doing in order to get to the next level. And I had to not go beyond what my frame allowed, but I had to fill my frame out. And at that point, I definitely realized I was a hard gainer. And it's definitely just someone who has trouble filling out their frame, not necessarily going beyond their means, but even just getting to a point where they look not so frail, I guess you could say.
Love that. And you, Amber, what are some signs that you notice or you see?
Definitely, I see it as a body type a lot of times with the people that I've worked with. I have one client in particular that I can always pull out of my memory bank, because he came to me and he wanted to put on all this weight and all this muscle. And he's kind of like you, Jeff. He's very tall and lean just naturally, and just has that nice lean body style. So that's what I've seen a lot of times. In mine, it has been that's what they're tall and lean, or even they can be petite and just naturally lean. So I look at that sometimes with their body style.
I love that. So let's turn it around a little bit. So we have our clients, we talked about the bodybuilder and all that other good stuff, but we have our women that come to us. And now these women all want these toned arms, and they want to look Jennifer Aniston arms. If I hear it once, I heard it 1,000 times. Or they want to have these muscular parts of their bodies, and they just, no matter what they lift, they seem to not be able to put on muscle. How do you address that, Sohaila?
Well,
Why is that
sometimes
happening? Why is that happening even?
I think a lot of it is going to be genetics. A lot of it's going to play down to that. But like I said, and like has been mentioned, if someone's on an ADHD medication that's appetite suppressant, it's going to be harder for them. If someone, overuses caffeine, they might have, there are so many factors, but a lot of times, and then sometimes somebody will build in the lower part of their body and not in the upper, and that's frustrating, and or vice versa. And that really is, that piece is going to be largely genetic. And one question is, I want to ask people is, okay, why is this your goal? Okay, because that's really important for us to know, not only what is our goal, but why is it our goal? Is someone always calling you, noodle, or what is it, or have you embraced that maybe you do have bow legs or chicken legs or whatever it is? Like, there might just be some factors that we do have to embrace. And I think that's an important thing that we talked about as we were preparing for you guys, just thinking that, we can help you. But the question is, is it going to be healthier for you to gain that weight? Is it going to improve your performance? And if not, is it really valuable? Now, we do know osteoporosis risk goes up if someone's frail. And so we want you to muscle build. We want you to eat healthy, but we don't want it to be your only focus when it comes to health. And, it can get into a detrimental lifestyle. I'm sure some of us have worked with people or experienced it where it becomes like this only focus, and then we don't have the health balance that we need. So I really think the why is important to think about.
I love that. How about you, Dylan? How do you train someone like that? These women that come to us that are, maybe going through a little bit of menopause and their body is changing. Can we get muscle on them? Can we increase that?
I'm a firm believer that you can, but you can't speed up nature. So nature has its own timeline. You have to be able to build a sense of communication with that client, with that person, and say, what are your goals right now? Why are they that, as Sohaila said? And then what are realistic expectations? And if you take one step back, where are we right now? So how can we move into those realistic expectations? How can we take a step in that direction? Most people think 10 steps ahead, right? They're at the top of the staircase saying, I made it, we're here. And then you have to be the person that gives them the 10 steps in between, right? And I think we as fitness professionals, right, we have to be those people to get out of them what they deserve and not what they expect or see on Instagram, right? So how can you continue to challenge that person in the gym, in the terms of just overall fitness, to gain more muscle? You can just change the stimulus, right? So you can try different types of exercise, eccentric, isometric, things that are challenging different positions. You can change the type of load, right? So you don't have to just add more plates to a barbell, but you can add resistance bands and other things, right? So you can play with those forms of fitness in terms of how to stimulate the body in a different way to produce different hormones. Because a lot of times, like Sohaila said, like it's very genetic based and it's very hormonal based. So I think we have to stimulate the body differently. If the brain is not challenged, it's not paying attention. So you have to give it a different stimulus in order to get a different result, right? The definition of insanity.
I love
do the same thing over and over again.
And Amber, how do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I do. I want to say that we have to look at the client as well. So they come to you and they say, I want to have Jennifer Aniston arms. And they're someone that we're tonight titling a hard gainer, someone who doesn't put on muscle and weight very easily. But let's look at the basics. Are they in a consistent training pattern? So if my lady's coming to me for Jennifer Aniston arms and she's showing up once a week, that's not going to get her where she needs to be. So I need her on a consistent, progressive weight training program. I tell my ladies all the time, you come in here and lift 5 and 10 pounds, your body's like, psh, it is not going to change if you've been doing that for a long time. So the consistency has to be there. We have to be progressively challenging the muscle with all of the things that Dylan said, and sometimes even more load, extra weight. Also, what is their sleep like? Are they getting the recovery time in so that they can actually build the muscle after they do the consistent progressive workout? And here's the big one that's going to happen for a lot of my ladies. They've got to eat enough calories to build the muscle. And a lot of them are not at that point where they're doing it, because what have we been taught? Eat little, eat little, eat little. So when I tell them you've got to eat more calories and you've got to really be focused on that protein and getting that right amount in, these are the basic fundamentals that they need to focus on. And we need to start with that and see, are they not getting the Jennifer Aniston arms because of the genetics and the hormones, or are there some foundational things that they're missing?
I love that. Sohaila, do you want to add anything about the sleep?
Yeah, I was thinking when you said that, I really think, bottom line is if you don't have enough calories, you're not going to be able to sustain, even if you work out hard, right? If you work out hard and you don't have enough calories, you're going to have the opposite problem. You're going to break down muscle and not be able to rebuild it, and not have the hypertrophy you're after. One thing I do when I work one-on-one with people as a registered dietitian is I take them through RMR testing, and I've sent them off for this at universities and physical therapy clinics for many years. And this year, for the first year, I actually have the equipment myself. So I've purchased the core equipment. It's KORR, and I'm just going to show you an example of what it is, similar to a bod pod. If some of you might be familiar with that. Some things check your body bone, lean mass, all those sorts of things. But the RMR test can be combined with that, or just you breathe it, and it's either a mask over your entire face that catches your oxygen, carbon dioxide exchange. This machine that I use also has the nose pinch, so that it's only measuring your exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide. It's really a fascinating piece of data that I've really enjoyed using with people, so that they know, like, this is the baseline that my body needs. It's going to tell them their resting metabolism. This is the baseline that my body needs if I wasn't moving. And then if I'm an athlete, or if I'm an exerciser, or if I'm weight training intensely to build muscle, then I need to add this much more. And it gives them the data that helps them decide, hey, how do I do this? How do I break this down and still meet the needs of my organs and basic functions? So I'm a big fan of that. I actually have a coupon code for it because I'm kind of a big nerd about it if anybody needs it. But I've just started using it, and it's not everybody doesn't have to have it, but for some people really helps them to have that data. Even the people who are under eating, like Amber said, if they're eating too little and they've been in a diet mentality for so long, they might not be willing to fuel their body for what it really needs until they see some data. So that's why it helps me to give them that baseline. Like, this is where we can't go below, because even if you were in a coma and you were in a clinical situation, I would give you this. And that really gives them an eye opener.
I love it. Well, so we're kind of going about the food thing. Did you want to add anything, Dylan, or are you good?
Yeah, if I could, we all kind of hit on the idea of, like, let's make it like realistic, right? So, like, let's look at, are you getting enough calories, right? Based on your BMR, are you getting enough sleep? Are you coming in once a week or 3 times a week? Are you being consistent? I do something called the report card with my clients. So when they walk in, right, and Amber, you talked about, like, the foundational pieces, right? Are you getting enough water? Are you sleeping well enough? Are you coming in 3 times a week or 1 time a week? And are you hitting your nutritional pieces? And you can break it up into different, classes, right? And you give them classes, you let them grade themselves, then you ask them, you grade them, and then you say, well, you want a 4.0 GPA body, but right now your GPA is at 2.7. So I'm sorry, but that's the difference, right? So how can we get you in between where you are and how you are going forward? And I find that to be super helpful, because it's a sense of self-reflection, right? It's not just us telling them, but we go over those foundational things, and they have those aha moments sometimes. So I find that might be helpful for somebody out there.
I love that. So we're kind of talking about food. So let's go right into it. It says, how can you modify a client's diet to increase quality calories without feeling full? How can you modify a client's diet to increase quality calories without feeling full? So I'm going to let you start with it, just because of what you do. And you had talked about the plates and everything, which is interesting.
Yeah. So you might be familiar with USDA's plate that has people eat, fruits and vegetables on one half of your plate, and protein and starch or carbohydrates, grains on the other half of your plate, and then the milk off to the side and the fruit off to the side, and the fat's kind of like your thumbprint. So if you're not familiar with that, that's a quick overlay of the plate. And then I kind of manipulate that with different clients for what they need. And so I'm going to use the example of my kids. I have a preteen, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And so even though I might make the same 3 or 4 items for a meal, different people at the table are going to have to construct the plate differently. So, and this is also a resource you may want to grab, and I'll drop it in the chat when I'm done telling you, but it's a Team USA has a plate if you have children that are athletes, or if you're an athlete, this is really helpful. Or if you have an off season and on season, whether it's bodybuilding related or goal related, it's really helpful for you to think, okay, what does my body need just on a regular day? And what does it need if I'm growing, or if I'm performing or competing? What does it need more? And so instead of that bottom half of the plate being really mostly roughage, which doesn't give you many calories and takes up a lot of space in your gut, so it fills you up because of the fiber expansion, instead of it being roughage, we flip-flop it. So we have half of the plate be starches, which is kind of more typical of the standard American, which is why people who don't want to gain weight are gaining weight, but we would flip flop it, and you can put your potatoes and your peas and your corn and your pasta and your bread there instead of just up in that little quarter. And you're still getting nutritious fruits and vegetables, and you still want to pick mostly nutrient dense. I don't mean like white bread and, you know, anything that just comes to mind. You mostly want to pick your sweet potatoes and your lima beans and, you know, black eyed peas and all those things to fill the plate so that it's still healthy, but they have 3 times the amount of calories per serving as a fruit or vegetable. So you kind of want to swap that. So that's one of the things. One of the other things is just think about calorie dense foods that don't take as many bites to consume that many calories. So nuts are a really easy one. I'll have them sprinkle nuts in their cereal, nuts in their salads, nuts over the, you know, sprinkle the olive oil. When my boys were little, I would literally they would probably be mortified if they knew all the things I put olive oil on when they were tiny, because they were just moving hyper machines. And I was always trying to keep them on the growth chart because we like to play hard. So I'd have to make sure we eat enough, and they had anaphylactic allergies, which made it really hard for them to get some dense foods. So all that to say is, you know, oils and avocados and fats and things that are really popular on the ketogenic diet that might be causing people to lose weight really actually cause people to gain weight when they're in combination with a good calorie amount and a good diet that's balanced overall. So I think thinking about dense foods, even cheese, if you choose a lower fat cheese, ideally, because we don't want to clog up your arteries while you're trying to gain weight. We don't want you to be skinny fat and put a bunch of junk of Oreos and things in there. So we want you to be nutritious along the way. But, cheese, oil, and nuts are 3 of the easy weight gainers. And then when it comes to fluids, instead of drinking water with everything, drink drinks that have fluid like water. So you're still getting hydration, but you're getting calories from it too. And that's the opposite of what I tell most of my clients. To drink caloric beverages is usually what I tell them not to do when they're trying to protect weight gain. But if they want to add it, that's something that's not super filling, that you can have a glass of milk with every meal, depending on your milk preference, or you can have a diluted fresh juice if possible, or some different things that are just, not sodas and not things that'll get you in trouble.
I love that. How about you, Dylan?
Yeah, so I love that the key word in here is quality foods, right? I mentioned a little earlier, if you're talking about the principles and trying to reach the apex of performance, you have to start with a foundation. That foundation for me is always quality of the food that people are taking in. And then on top of that, we add quantity, right? So how many or how much protein are we getting in? How many grams of carbohydrates are we getting in? How many grams of fats are we getting in? Can we sneak more of them in, like Sohaila was saying? And then we talk about timing. So Sohaila hit on so many great points. I don't want to reiterate and be redundant on any of those. So if I could add one thing to that, it would be at the top of my pyramid is timing and support. So we talk about timing. You need to be optimal in your timing, right? It's not great to eat Thanksgiving dinner at 11 o'clock at night, right? For like obvious reasons. But if we talk about, trying to put on weight in a healthy manner, it needs to be consistently throughout the day, right? And especially if these are kids, once again, like Sohaila was talking about, you need to have food for fuel as, you sit in school and your brain is getting tested all day. And then you have recess or you have gym class, and then you immediately go from school to practice, right? If you're an athlete. And I know a lot of times that kids skip these meals, or they're like too busy being social and they just don't go about it strategically enough. So it comes down to the consistency and the timing a lot of times. If you have someone who's being looked after, and someone like Sohaila who has obviously taught their kids to eat good food, then it might come down more so to like timing, right? Like, how can we get good quality foods at an opportune time based around their activity? I think is a really good opportunity and a really good place to add a little bit of education, especially for people, once again, that we're calling hard gainers. If you do want to gain weight, you might want to eat more calories at night, right? It would probably benefit you. We tell people to stop eating 2 to 3 hours before going to bed, and we tell people to eat mostly fruits and vegetables. And most of the people come to us because they want to lose weight. And I always tell them, like Sohaila said, well, if you probably ate more fruits and vegetables just naturally, if you cut out all the processed foods, you would lose weight. We just did a 30-day challenge, and with 47 people, and we lost over 110 pounds collectively, just from cutting out sugar, alcohol, and processed foods. So, you know, if you just cut out more of that, you would lose it. So for people who are trying to hard gain, not drink more alcohol, more sugar, and processed foods, right? That's not the goal, but eat more of the big filling foods, right? Eat more of the potatoes, more of, you know, the proteins, and make sure they're good quality. And I think if we keep it simple, Sally, it's easy to maintain and be consistent.
I love that. Amber?
Remind me of the question.
The question is going to be, how can you modify a client's diet to increase quality calories without feeling full?
Yes. Okay. So this is a little difficult, especially if you have someone who doesn't like to eat a whole lot. Probably if they are a hard gainer, they may not really eat that much throughout the day. So now we have to increase their calories. Both Sohaila and Dylan made great points. And I just want to say about the fat. We know that fat, that's why Sohaila said oils and nuts, all of those things, avocados, those are higher in calories for a much smaller amount. So if you've got someone who's kind of struggling with trying to get enough food in without just feeling like, oh, I'm stuffing myself, it might be good to focus on those fat dense foods, because that's going to get that caloric intake up for sure.
I love that. So in my own existence, I've weighed in 179 my entire life. I weigh 179 today. That's my go weight. When I was younger, I did a physique competition and they wanted me to put weight on. And so I had a trainer and I got up to 218. And it was really hard for me, but it was really interesting that he always had me eat something sweet and then run and eat like a plate of rice and chicken to put the weight on me. And it was interesting because I got to that size, but as soon as I stopped that, my body just melted back to where I was, because my natural build is what my natural build is. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Sohaila, can you stress though the time ever, because you see people all the time in the locker rooms, they've worked out hard and they're doing a shake and they're trying to replenish and they're trying to put something, talk to me about that. What actually is going on
I
there?
should say that caveat, there is some debate on this in recent years as to whether that is it a 15-minute window, is it a 30-minute window, and does it matter that much? I don't think we need to cause stress over it, but I do think if someone needs to gain weight, then they need to make the most of their time windows. They really shouldn't be gapping 4, 6, 8 hours between meals anyway. And a workout takes up a good chunk of that time, especially if you're driving, going and coming, or if you're part of a team. So you need to think about making the most of just general windows so that you can eat in little increments so that you don't feel so full. So even if it's a recovery meal or a recovery shake, or just a meal that you've planned because you don't want to go too long without meals, I do think, I know, and I hate to say this, it almost feels, you know, if you're an athlete and you have a specific goal, eating is somewhat your job. Like I remember telling my brother that in college, I was like, just like getting good grades is your job as a college student. Well, since you're a college athlete, eating is also part of your job. And you can't just forego it, or, you know, you have to plan ahead. You have to think about what's going to be a recovery. And so I think, you know, that's important. Now, back to the very first thing we said is, does it really need to be yours? Is up to you to decide. That's some self-assessment you need to have, because you may not be part of a team that's expecting you to have this level of performance or this, you know, number of pounds, like Jeff said, his trainer was asking of him. So I think that's a really important question for everybody to answer. But I do think, you know, if you have a certain goal, it might be that you just kind of do it, just like someone who's an athlete might do certain stretches they don't feel like doing. You might need to do certain fueling times throughout the day that you don't really feel like doing. The question is that important? And is it overall in your best interest, wellness wise, big picture?
Love that. I love it. Let's go to the next one. How can you design a training program for someone who struggles to gain weight? How can you design a training program for someone who struggles to gain weight? Amber.
So when you're looking at their training program, and again, this goes back to their goals as well. So let's say one of the main goals is they want to gain weight, and I'm going to think along with that they want to gain muscle. As I spoke on before, we have to be working on that progressive weight training workout, because muscle is going to be more dense, and if we're going to put on that muscle mass, there's got to be some challenge there for the muscles. And I also just want to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be something that changes all the time. It's actually good to put someone on a plan to see how they're progressing with the same exercises, to see if that weight amount is going up, if they're getting stronger as they go. And we touched on this a little bit. I think Dylan probably will want to talk a little bit about this, but when you're looking at the cardio or other things that they might be doing that's burning up energy, burning up calories, they might have to depress and kind of downplay some of those exercises or things that they might do. Like you might have somebody who they love cycling and they're out cycling every single day, maybe not so much for an exercise, but because they love it. But if they're out cycling for 3 and 4 hours a day and you're thinking you're trying to put on weight, but you're just constantly burning calories, we have to look at their lifestyle and what they're doing as well.
I love it. How about you, Dylan? How do you design a training program for someone who struggles to gain weight?
Hitting on what Amber just said, you really have to reassess what they've done so far and probably say, well, most of that was not working. So let's see how we can tweak it. And, if they love to cycle, well, maybe we have them cut their cycling in half. Or maybe we say that you come to the gym and you work on a recumbent bike and we do sprints instead of long 30-minute rides, right? So how can we change and tweak it? And like anything, like nutrition, like Sohaila has mentioned so many times, we don't need to, create this entirely different thing that's not realistic from a lifestyle perspective, but we need to be consistent. So we need to look at your major lifts and we need to look at how they're progressing or not. And we need to see if we can stimulate them differently. So I love to get into the science of, there's obviously just basic endurance training. Then you have hypertrophy training. Then you have strength training, right? Like the powerlifting type of stuff. And then you have, power and performance-based training. So if someone wants to get bigger, we have to focus more on CNS recruitment and muscle fiber recruitment, right? So we need to have a good blend of strength and hypertrophy. And that will usually come down to working a muscle till failure and trying to increase its capacity to do that, right? It has to be done from an isometric, eccentric, and also concentric standpoint. So we can't just stand there and shorten and lengthen the muscle and expect it to grow by doing the same thing all the time. We need to challenge it in different ways. And that might be load, right? So you might add weight to the deadlifts, or you might add resistance bands to the deadlifts, right? So that there's constant tension and there's constantly changing. So the muscle is having to pay more attention and it's mimicking that elastic tension that sits in the muscle. So there's lots of different ways, but I think you can keep it pretty simple. I think just challenging the basic movements and working a little less cardio and a little more strength and hypertrophy training in with different stimulus. So resistance bands, different positions, things of that nature definitely help.
I love that. Sohaila?
Then from a nutrition perspective, if we get people down to fatigue and failure, what's going to happen? Their metabolic rate is going to skyrocket, right? In a good way. So then they have to be ready to fuel enough so that the hypertrophy happens, right? If we do all the work breaking down the muscle and then we don't have the fuel to build back the muscle, then we're sort of wasting our time and effort and energy. And so I do think it's hard work. It's hard work, just like losing weight is hard work. And I think, again, I know we've all said it many times, just reconsidering goals and seasons and what it's about. But I do think accepting some of the physique. I mean, we've all shared a little bit about our own stories. I lift pretty heavy and people don't believe that. And I'm lifting like a really heavy weight and I'm putting it away. And ladies are like, oh my gosh, how'd you even pick that up? And I'm like, I know, I'm never going to be super amazingly buff looking, but I can lift really heavy. And it's a genetic thing and I work at it, but it doesn't really, like, my frame doesn't ever look quite like I'm lifting that heavy. And, and it's interesting when you have children, if you have like mini me's, I have one mini me and my husband has a mini him. And, the one is working out like crazy and the other one does a couple pull-ups at the bottom of the stairway before he goes up to bed. And it is quite interesting. I mean, of course, age will catch up with them a little bit and make it a little less easy, but it is quite interesting. And I want to say this about fat tissue. Fat tissue is not as genetic. Where you put it is genetic. How much you put is between you and your fork and your spoon and your cup and your movement. So I do think some people are going to say, they said there were so many genetic things, that's why I'm so overweight. I do think where you put your fat deposition is very genetic. And metabolism can be genetic, but for most people, age kind of levels out the genetic playing field from the early teens. And, by the time people are 30, 40, 50, it's fairly level playing field with metabolism. I don't have very many people that when I test their metabolism, I'm like, wow, you have an amazing metabolism. Just naturally, like when they're over 20, 30, that's just not that common. I have it sometimes, but rare. More often, I have people that have done so many crazy diets that they've backfired the metabolism. We have to help them get it to a healthier place. So I just think, really getting a balanced approach as to how you can best serve your body with sleep and all those other things are so important. Wouldn't that be a shame if somebody spent so much time, cracking 8 eggs every morning and so much effort and then didn't get the sleep where their body needs to produce that testosterone in those deeper levels of sleep in order to do it for men and women both. So I think, we could oversimplify it if we just talk about the gym or if we just talk about protein or if we just talk about sleep, because they really do all have to go hand in hand.
I love that. And speaking, you mentioned age just a little bit, and we know that we lose muscle as we get more mature. And so that is something that, the active agers are coming to us and they want to put muscle on. How would you train? Now, this is a question that we've got like 8 minutes already, kids. So we've got to but I would love to know how you're doing that in a way to get their muscle back on in a safe manner. And of course it's doable, but how do you just prescribe it? How do you handle that, Dylan?
So for quite a few years, I've actually done genetic testing where I can send lab results out and have genetics sent back. And you can figure out where these people's epigenetics overlap with genetics, like Sohaila was just talking about, right? Like how much fat you hold on to is not genetic, where you store it is, right? So from a hormonal standpoint, you can get a good reading too on, is this person naturally just a little lower on the testosterone level or a little higher on the estrogen level? Or is this something that is lifestyle induced? And there's so much research coming out about testosterone levels and all of the things that change it and alter it. And ultimately, if, I work with quite a few gentlemen who are over 60 years old and just constantly talk about muscle and muscle and muscle. And being in Boca Raton, there's a lot of people who even go get, hormone replacement. And unfortunately, they've gotten to that point. And at that point, when they are doing that, it's not getting them over and above what they need for testosterone to gain muscle. It's probably just maintaining enough to have an okay sex life, to be honest with you, right? There's a huge amount of that needs to be talked about. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And it is very in-depth, and a lot of it is coming to the surface now. But ultimately, at that age, you have to get your hormones right. You have to get enough vitamin D. You have to get enough sleep. And you have to have a balanced lifestyle in order for you to even talk about having desire to gain muscle and lose body fat.
Loved it. Amber, what about you?
I'm just piggybacking right on that. And I think you're going to find that with all of us. We have to look at them as a whole person. So these are my people. I'm the active agers. I train a lot of them. And they know when they come in my studio or when I go out to their house to train them, we look at all aspects, those foundations that I talked about. What's their sleep like? What's their hydration? What's their stress level like? And are they doing anything with positive stress reduction techniques? Are they doing a nice outside walk to just recover and relax and let that stress level come down? And then on top of that, of course, we have the nutrition and the movement, which is the thing that they think they're coming to me for. But then we look at all of those different foundational big blocks in their life. And so if they want to put that weight on, Dylan is on to something with the hormones, which I don't have a way to help people at my studio with that, but that's definitely something that is important to look at. But then factoring in all of these other things and working on those daily habits. And then, as I said before, we've got to have that progressive weight training workout where we're constantly challenging the muscle, giving them a little something different to work on. And the thing that I always have my clients notice is, are you stronger? Can you get down and up off of the floor? Because those things right there, they may not see the muscle on their body necessarily, but if they're telling me that they can do things that they couldn't do before, they can carry that water in from the grocery store. That's important too. And with osteoporosis, are they doing the weight bearing exercises to keep that bone strong and healthy? So all of those things are so important. It's not just one thing.
And I think we can all piggyback. Maybe it's you, Sohaila. Like I have clients I'm training all the time, and they've come to me always broken. Something has been wrong. And these women are, a lot of women, and they're 68 plus, 69, 70. And what we're noticing is they are like you guys saying, well, my arms still look, you know, I'm crepey. That's skin, kid. I can't do anything about your skin, but I can fill you up with muscle. But I'm like, you haven't been hurt. You haven't been hurt for 2 years. You've not been hurt. You came to me hurt and you kept hurting yourself. That means we strengthened you in the right way that you're not hurt anymore. It's not just the aesthetics. So Sohaila, and you, how would you like to finish it up for us?
I think that's so important. And you know, that first 4 to 8 weeks, the first time they ever weight train with you, they have this gain that they can't have again. So that's kind of unfortunate. And I mean, they might once or twice, but so we need to warn them. I think managing expectations is helpful. Like you need to warn them, like it's going to be a little uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people are like, well, at my age, I don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. And I think if they're really, really consistent, like my mom, for example, she doesn't do uncomfortable workouts at all, but she walks twice a day, every day, and does everything herself. So she's really not losing bone because she's not taking any breaks. So they either need to be extremely consistent, or they need to get a little uncomfortable for make up for the times that they weren't consistent. And I think a lot of people don't want to be uncomfortable, and they tell me, my book is called Your Best Body, and people are like, honey, I don't need to be my best body anymore. And I'm like, au contraire, like when I'm your age, I want to be my very best. And that doesn't mean bikini best necessarily. That means I don't want someone to help me out of my car every time I get up. And so like when I teach my Tabata classes, they're like, why are we getting down? We just got down. Why are we getting down, getting up? And I'm like, because if I make you beautiful and strong and you can't get down and up, I am failing you. So every single rotation is up, down, up, down. And I'm like, if you fall in the church parking lot, I need you to dust off and head on in and not head on to the ER. And so we practice, getting down and up in those quick 10-second breaks. And so I do think, I love that you said celebrate like the victories of the things that they feel better and stronger doing. And it might not be that they fully fill out all the crepey skin and all those things. They might have to accept that there's some of that. We're all accepting aging. Everybody's in this whole video is older at the end of the video than we were at the beginning. And that's part of embracing that.
I love that.
I love that. Do you want to add anything, Dylan?
No, I just love how everybody hit on the fact that it's not aesthetic. It's like, how do you actually feel? You feel stronger. You haven't gotten hurt. You are able to pick up your grandson. You're more resilient. You're less sick. You're less frail. You're picking up more weight. Like, we got to celebrate those wins.
I love that. So guys, believe it or not, we are kind of where we need to be. Before we sign off though, I would love for my panel to give you just for my people that cannot gain weight and cannot gain muscles, give them just your elevator pitch. Do you want to start it off, Amber?
Okay, your elevator pitch. You got to get your butt in gear, lift those weights, and eat, and get that protein in.
Love it, love it. How about you, Sohaila?
Yeah, and if you feel like you're struggling, it's a worthy investment to spend $100 or so to get your metabolism tested, your RMR, to see where your baseline is, so that you have some data. And make sure you do that with, a reputable source, and reach out to me if you have questions. But yes, eating enough to fuel yourself so that you feel like a superstar that you are. And I really think, 70 active is more like 90. 90 active is more like 70 inactive. I said that backwards, but it's such a big difference if you maintain that strength and activity, even if you have some signs of aging and your body's not perfectly perfect. Welcome to reality, all of us, right?
I love it. And Dylan, last but definitely not least.
Well, thank you. Definitely look at your report card. Be consistent in the absolute basis, your foundation. How can you maintain what you have? If you're not maintaining what you have, we can't talk about growth. So make sure your foundation is filled to the brim, and then we can talk about the steps to improve. And I would totally agree with Sohaila that it's very important to reach out to someone who you can trust and who you can look to for guidance, and who's not going to judge you for all of that.
I love that. Well, I want to thank Sarah for letting me stand in and learn what I did tonight. I hope you guys learned as much as I did. I want to thank my panel. I hope you felt the passion and the professionalism that I felt from them. I hope you learned something from tonight. If you have any questions, I've made them put their information on it. Remember, this has been recorded, so it will definitely be available to you. You'll get an email tomorrow from it. Manias, we are happening, guys, so please make sure you stop by and see us. Definitely, you'll see all of us out and about when we're at a Mania. Come back to see us. Next Thursday, new topic, new panel. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.